Hey guys, it's the testimony of my life, part 4. In the last session, in the third one, I was talking about my time in retreat when I was living in a shack, and I spent basically 2 years just waiting on God and learning about His presence, but I had some other lessons to learn there, and I was sharing about those things God has shown me during this time, and I'm gonna continue with these lessons. One of the greatest benefits of these 2 years was learning about what is actually the presence of God. Like, I had an idea of the presence, like when I worship and when I feel overwhelmed, when I shake on the ground, when I'm in the spirit, then that is the presence of God. That was my definition. And when I decided that I would spend my whole life on Jesus, I kind of subconsciously I thought that I would do a lot of shaking and I would do a lot of laying on the ground, and I would somehow disappear from all the normal life activities. And I told God that I want to live life with Him, but my idea of life with God was quite unnatural and absolutely out of the human experience. So God really had to redefine my definition of the presence of God. And there was this box in my head with all the things that the presence of God entails, like worship, shaking on the ground, being enthusiastic, waiting on the Lord in silence. It was all in the presence of God box. And all the other aspects of life were kind of like neutral places, or actually the opposites of the presence in my mind. And God just broke these ideas. He started to show me what He can be in. What are the things that can actually mean His presence, that I thought of before as something that is contrary to His presence. The first thing that where I discovered that it can be the presence of God, it was nature and walking in nature and observing creatures. And I remember watching a tree, and it seemed so glorious. I had to lay on the ground and I just soak in worship because I saw that the tree was that glorious. And there were times when my eyes just opened, and not supernaturally, like not to heaven, like I saw the earthly normal surroundings, and it was so infused with supernatural beauty. I was just standing in awe, just watching ordinary landscapes and observing little plants and bugs, and I was like, oh, you are so glorious. Do you know how glorious you are? And it made me drunk in the spirit just to watch flowers, like it just everyday stuff. Sometimes I even saw the objects left on the table worshiping God. They look like worshiping God, and it is maybe the edge of sanity when you see objects worshiping God. But when my eyes open, I see the glory everywhere. And basically that's what Jesus meant by the glory of God covering the earth. Like, it's a present reality, it is covering it, but one day the knowledge of this glory will cover the earth. Like, you will realize this glory everywhere, and basically that's the only change that's gonna happen. The glory is present, whether you see it or not, sense it or not, is the question. And I began to sense the glory in meaningless things, in everyday things, and it was a great shift that to realize that, oh, it's okay that I can shake on the ground and see heavenly visions, but Jesus wants to be in the hot chocolate and in my walk uh, to the horses, and it was a horsing farm where I lived. So all the things in the box of non-presence things had been emptied. Like all the things I thought God cannot be involved or cannot be involved that intensely had been changed into the very experience of God's presence. And one of the things I learned to do in a way that it's an expression of my fellowship with Jesus was painting. And first I started to paint to document my visions, and it was terrible because you cannot find the right color, the right composition, the lights are different. Like you have seen a spiritual thing that is multi-dimensional, and then you try to do it with your little paint. It just didn't work. It was so frustrating. It actually made me sad, so I just stopped doing it. But while I was in the shack, I started to do painting just for fun, like without having a great revelation to put on the canvas in my mind. And it was just my fun thing, just experimenting, trying out textures, see how it works. It's okay if I blew it up. And it became quite enjoyable. So much so that after a while, my time with Jesus and painting just blurred together. Like I was worshipping a bit and painting a bit, and when I felt really overwhelmed, I put down the paintbrush and I was just lingering. And there were times when I didn't paint at all the whole day. I was just holding the brush basically. And there were days when I painted 6 paintings, and I was really active, and I knew that Jesus was there, but he was maybe my company in painting. But there were times when I was just soaking the whole time, and it was really great to learn that the creative process itself is the presence of God. Like I don't need to divide my time into worshipping first and then painting, but I can just do it all together. And the very act of creating something, we are the image of the Creator, is prophetic, it is spiritual. And just the fact that I make something is an expression of God's presence, because I am like him and he's creator, so I am creator, and I can experience his nature in me when I paint. And even if what I do is not specifically spiritual, just the act of creation is an expression of God. And of course it's fun to paint about experiences with Jesus and revelations and trying to express things and experiment with different materials and painting with bugs. Like I had little bugs walking with painted legs on the canvas, and I was doing silly things. And it was a great thing to do, to just be a child and have fun and have Jesus at the same time. I thought for a long time that having fun and being with Jesus are like not the same. And it was in that season when I realized that they are very much the same things. And I always, when I felt the urge to paint or create, I always suppressed it because it is better to spend time with Jesus than creating. So I stopped creating. And now I could just do it both, and I didn't need to measure like how much time I spent on what. It was just a flow. Now I have this idea that my life is one big endless experience of God, with changing manifestations and aspects to it, but it's one big endless encounter. And it's great to realize that the expression changes. Like if you had a great date in McDonald's, like if you go every time to that McDonald's to meet that friend, you will be probably disappointed because this friend won't always be there, because he will be at some other place. So dating with Jesus is something like that. Like you need to be where he is, and he is not always in the very same thing. So the very fact that you don't experience him in worship anymore is not the proof of you falling out or you doing it wrong or not being passionate about God. It's the sign that now Jesus wants to do something else, and it's gonna be just as much in the center of his presence than the previous thing was. There was a season in the shack when I couldn't worship. I'm a great fan of worship. I love all the styles and everything. Like I love everything from battle, soaking to skillet. I have a very wide range of musical tastes, but it was so great when I couldn't worship for a while, even though I was depressed about it. Like I thought I was doing something wrong. I realized that okay, I can't do that. I don't know what's wrong, but I can't do that. And I started to write poems, a lot of them, and letters. And I was under condemnation, so I couldn't really enjoy it because I thought like it's something I can do at least when I can't be with Jesus the way I want and as intensely as I want. So it was something like a substitutory thing to the real presence of God. That's how I experienced it. But looking back from now, I am posting that poems on my page and that novels when I in that revelations, and they are looking back. They are so full of tangible presence and crazy revelation. I just wondered, have I really written them? Like they are too good for that. And they are so inspired. And they came out of the season when I couldn't be with God. At least I saw it that way. So when God just allows you to not experience him in one way, maybe it's just because he wants to show you some other aspect to his presence. And because you experienced it very intensely in something, it doesn't mean that you need to give up on the intensity, but you need to give up on the way and method and manifestation, which is kind of a big deal because you love shaking on the floor. Maybe it feels strange to go out for a walk with Jesus. But I had to learn this, how to do things with God and enjoy it, and how not to put myself under pressure, how much time should I sit in silence waiting on the Lord, which I love doing, I need to tell you. But there are so many other aspects to God's presence that are just as valuable and just as intense as waiting on the Lord in silence. And of course, these can be distractions. Like anything can be a distraction, but anything can be the center of experiencing Jesus as well. So, and what is the difference? Like, how do you decide whether it's distraction or not? I don't know. There's no rule for that, because this whole thing is set in your brain. Like, if you think this is an event that's gonna exclude you from the presence, you're gonna feel excluded from the presence. But it's not the truth. God is ever present. He's everywhere. His glory is filling up the earth. But you will sense like that. So if you say, oh, all the relatives come over this afternoon, I can't be with Jesus, it's a lie. You can be crazy jacked up by your talking about meaningless stuff to your aunt or something. And yeah, it's crazy how to learn living in the presence actually means getting rid of the lies about things that God can be in, and it feels so free when you let go of them. I can tell you. And it feels so great to create things with God. For example, in this season, during the quarantine, I loved creating with God. Like, I just started to post things and make content on Facebook and Instagram, and I just realized that there's no need for me to divide being with Jesus and creating content, because I'm in a constant experience, and when I feel when I feel God is inviting me into just leaning on Him, then I stop the posting thing and I stop editing pictures. But there are times when I'm so excited to make 100 posts, then I just keep on doing them, and I just feel like, do you like that, Jesus? I'm sure, I hope you still like it, because I'm so excited to do this. And He's there and reassuring me that He's all in. And yeah, so I'm all for complete silence, but the presence of God, not even the intensity of it, is dependent on it. The other aspect of the season living in the shack was traveling. I wasn't always there, so there were days and weeks when I was there, just me and Jesus, and there were times when I was invited to places to speak and to minister. And first, it was really hard for me. I was under a lot of pressure. I thought I had to perform something. I had to make enough miracles or preach good enough message or something like that. And I was so stressed out. But with time, I just started to take these trips as adventures with Jesus. Like, I'm going there to be with Jesus there, and I'm gonna have fun watching how Jesus spills out of me, And even if it won't, like, it won't be visible, Jesus coming out of me, then it's okay. When the lights are switched off at night, I'm gonna have a great conversation with him, and I don't need to amaze all these people. So I started to have this intention in ministry that I'm invited there. Okay, it must be fun to be with Jesus there. This is a new setup, new kind of people, new place, and I have never been with Jesus like that under these circumstances, so it's gonna be something I've never seen of Jesus. So I'm going there to see that face of Jesus I have never been able to see, and I would never be able to see anywhere else. So it's basically traveling in this bubble where only I am and Jesus, and we go there for each other. And I don't say that I'm always aware of this and I always have this attitude, but every time I have this in my mind, it feels so free and so easy. And of course, because of the lack of effort, there are way much fruit as well. But the funny thing about that approach is that you don't really care about fruit anymore. Like, you don't really want to make enough people getting healed or something. Like, oh yeah, this happened. Jesus is fun. I was so lost in him, I didn't even realize that these miracles happened. And I'm saying I'm not always there in my mind, but every time I have this attitude just a little bit, it shifts everything. And I was traveling a lot with my friends who were much more experienced in ministry, and just as a helper, or even less, just an observer of the ministry. We went to places, to families, and to events, and I was just there watching how they were doing things, how they treated people. And it was a season of learning for me, and not specifically spiritual kind of stuff was the thing I was learning there. Mostly psychological things and communication skills. I had a long season in my life when I wasn't a people person. I was very reserved and suicidal, and I didn't have relationships at all. And it was most of my life, so I don't really have this people skills, and so a lot of things that are natural to most people are not natural for me. So I had to learn this, how to treat people's resistance and people's acceptance, and people who don't understand your message, and people who are too much of a fan of you, and this whole thing. And it was crazy that I was in a retreat and so many people like warned me, like, you shouldn't go on a retreat because you will be there alone and you are already very reserved and introverted, and maybe you will be depressed again. Like, you shouldn't do that, it won't do good to you. But God was taking care of me, like, in the season when I was there in a shack. Like, I lived in a place with no water, no electricity, just Jesus in the woods. I always had some people coming over or taking me to places. Not always, but every now and then. So I had days or weeks completely alone with Jesus, but every now and then just people visited me or took me on a trip. And it's so not reasonable, but I've spent more time with people during my retreat than any other time in my life before. So I was in the retreat, not talking to people, and God just solved this thing, how to relate with others even in that time, and kind of forced me into people situations in a way of like invitations. And when my ministry friends took me to their ministry trips, it was a burden first, because I didn't like being with people, because I felt bad at people situations. I thought I was so embarrassingly inadequate to communicate with people, so I wanted to flee away, or like it was so, I felt so unnatural when greeting people and introducing myself to people. So it was something like a punishment to me. And in my whole life, and this is the season when God started to break down even those strongholds in my brain, which is crazy when you are retreated and you exclude your whole life and you are just with Jesus, and God still solves that, even the lies concerning about people and social situations are also eliminated in your brain, from your brain. So yeah, it's so kind that God can do things that are seemingly opposite to each other at the same time, and he doesn't give a flying flip solving this. He's just so fine doing absolutely contrary things simultaneously, and I love this about him, like getting away from people and opening myself up to people at the same time. That's what was going on when I was on retreat. And I knew that this season of living in the shack will be over once. And I talk about the reconnection to city life and all the testimonies about it in the Mari Miracles video. So yeah, I knew this would happen, and the reason why I knew it is because I started to have ideas from God that couldn't be done in that situation, like all these visions and great ideas and creative stuff and all this things I could do with Jesus, and I felt like I need electricity for all that and other circumstances in life. So I was planning to come back, and through quite a few miracles I could move back to the city. And I started to minister more, of course, and be involved with events and teaching people. One of the passions that came very much to the surface in this retreat season was teaching people on the presence of God. Not just like, I'm gonna tell you how to do it, which I can't, obviously, because I'm really in the beginning of it. But I would like to, I wanted to create a space for people to come together just for the presence and experiment with it and share their revelations and experiences with the presence of God, and just encourage and learn from each other and experiment together, and share all the knowledge we gained from them. So that's the vision of the School of Intimacy, the retreat house. I have a video titled that, and I explained this vision quite in detail in that video. And when as I moved back to the city, I started to um, do this cruise of intimacy, which is in a very limited way now. I just have some small groups and some weekend retreats when we do that, and when we try to live all the aspects of this vision. I explain in the School of Intimacy video, like coming together, enjoying Jesus, experimenting, sharing things, and just maybe Jesus, exclusively spending the time enjoying Jesus. And it's so much fun doing it. I feel so alive when I can do that, and it's so much fun to see people living for the first time and coming alive just because they find out how much fun it is to be with Jesus, and that they don't need to do something else, something bigger, something more significant or spectacular than that. And they can just live their lives in the presence of God. I can see so many changes in people, and it's so much fun to go to this meeting because no responsibilities on my shoulder. I can be just jacked up the whole time. So and share what I see and what I hear, or not share anything and allow people to do that for me. So and meet people who have seen Jesus in ways I've never seen, and learn from them. So it's the best, one of the best seasons of my life. The quarantine time is quite a new thing regarding the challenges. In the first few days in spring, in the first wave, I felt like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Like I restarted ministering to people and doing gatherings, and now it was all over, and I was like, what am I gonna do? Okay, I can be with Jesus, yeah, but I still felt strange. And after a few days, Jesus just told me that, okay, if you didn't have this time, you would want this time. Like if your life was very busy now, you would be out of your way to find a season like that. So now here you have it, enjoy it. And yeah, that's when I started to like really change my mind about this season, and I started to enjoy it like crazy. So much so that when people felt sorry about me that I can't travel and can't do my stuff, and they asked questions like, how do you cope with that? And I tried to answer politely like, oh, I'm doing okay. But the real thing was that this is the best season of my life. Like, don't end this time. I'm gonna stay here forever. That's what I felt, but I thought it would be impolite to say to people who struggle. Because it was the best time of my life. Like I had time to be with Jesus, but I'm quite careful with that. I never allow my life to become too busy to be with Jesus and enjoy his presence. But I quite often allow to my life too busy for doing stupid ideas and experimenting with things with Jesus. So I had a lot of ideas of writing romans and novels and short stories and digital graphics and all kinds of creative stuff to social media. And I always put these ideas on the shelf because I didn't have time for them. And it was in quarantine when I realized, like, actually I have time for Jesus. but I actually have time even for those things. So I had no excuse. I had to do all the ideas that bubbled up in the inside uh, when I was hanging out with Jesus. So I I spent most of my time in the park. There's a huge city park close to me, because you couldn't go anywhere in the spring in Hungary. So I was just there having trips with Jesus and just uh, using the park as my office and creating stuff there, or just listening to great teachings. And that's when I discovered Matt Spinks, and it was a crazy crazy season. I was listening to his stuff, and I was just enjoying life. I became such a child. Like, I let go even of the rest of the responsibilities I had on my shoulders. Like, I started to enjoy the most ridiculous things, like making hot chocolate and cooking good food. And I was just like, I don't need to be the serious minister. Not that I was thinking about myself like that, but maybe a little bit. And I just had this new identity of, I'm just a silly child experimenting with daddy stuff. And if this whole thing blows up, it's fine. If I do something very silly and damaging, it's okay. I'm just daddy's little kid. And that's when I started to really have pleasure in the most mundane things. Like, sometimes I just grab a book and I become so excited that I can read that I feel like jumping up and down, and like I really feel like I'm a child. And I do all the things I've never dared to do. Watch those movies that I thought are not okay, or listen to that kind of music that I thought are not really godly, and go to places that are not really Christian and all this stuff, because I grew up as a Christian girl, and there were a lot of things. Most of the things that were funny, they weren't godly. So they were two opposite boxes, fun and God. And now just discovering that they are actually very much merged into one another and mixed together. And yeah, I think I enjoy life the way I've never enjoyed it before. That's the truth about quarantine. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, but that's how I feel. And I enjoy just staying at home and being free to create a lot of content and write stories like that don't make that much sense at the moment, but it feels fun to write down, and just enjoying the fact that Jesus in it all, and that he gives the ideas, he gives the application, and he gives the joy while doing it, and he's the joy in the testimonies I received after posting them. So, and yeah, life is good, and that's a new discovery. For a long time I didn't feel like that. The other thing that is typically a quarantine thing for me is dating with Jesus. I always had this like, oh, let's spend the whole afternoon with Jesus thing. But now I actually plan dates. Like, I go to a certain place just with that intention in mind, that I'm gonna be with Jesus there. So like, I go to a beautiful spot of the city, or a tourist attraction, or I go on a trip or something like that, just to go there to have a conversation or a meeting with Jesus. And it doesn't really make sense that because Jesus is everywhere and every time and he's accessible, but there is something in my mind that is more focused and more excited when I know that the exclusive point in this whole trip is Jesus. So there is nothing much magical about it, but it's very much magical because of my attention involved. So I go to different places, I buy good food, and I just enjoy watching the river or the lake with all the ducks and all the landscape, and I'm just there leaning on Jesus and telling him, I'm here for you. I'm here to be with you. I hope you're enjoying this time. And we just have a great day. And then I go home excited, like, oh, it was great. And of course, at home, he's already waiting for me. So it is not that magical, but there is something to it. So yeah, that's another new phenomena in quarantine, dating with Jesus. Between the two quarantine times in the summer, I had a season of like quite a normal life. Like I was going to youth camps and small groups, mostly interdenominational ones, to preach at and teach or help or whatever. And it was fun. It felt kind of a normal life. But when this quarantine time came back, in the autumn, I felt like it's okay. I already love you. Like, I remember you were great in spring and you will be great again. Not that I'm happy for this crisis, of course I'm not, and I'm sorry for all the people who suffer from it, but it's so special to me that Jesus can turn everything on its head, and all the wrongs the devil can come up with, he is just switching it like that. And here you have an awesome opportunity to spend time with Jesus without feeling obliged to find excuses to your friends. Yeah, so that's where I'm at in my life. That was my journey with Jesus, and you can find out in the other episodes like how it happened from my childhood through encountering him in 2016 and through the retreat of 2 years, right, to the quarantine times where we are at this point. I love you guys, and I pray that the Holy Spirit would show you very similar things and deep revelations on His presence, and I wish that you will receive way much more than I could ever imagine or I could ever share with you. And I'm sure that God has prepared crazy things for you, and just be open to experience it because it's already yours. It has already been given to you. God bless you guys, and enjoy life. It's now, and Jesus is in the present moment.